Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm Judy from East Texas Living, and yes, we're recovering from the ice storm. Things are melting quite well outside. Now we have just kind of a muddy mess, but anyhow, since I can't really get out much today, I'm going to do a little bit of a cooking video, and this is not a cooking channel per se, so I cook a lot. Consider myself a pretty good cook, but this is not a cooking channel. I'm going to do these from time to time, primarily for the benefit of our kids, because all of our grown kids, they say, we don't know how to cook. And so I'm going to do this for them from time to time, and certainly if y'all enjoy it and you want to see more of it, I can. So last night we're sitting here and Jimmy had gone through the last sleeve of Oreos that he had, and so I knew I needed to make something today. And so we haven't been to town because of the storm, and so I'm limited on supplies, but what I do have is something that I can make my Mimo's chocolate pie. And you know, there's a lot of variations on chocolate pie out there, but to me this one is special because my grandma used to make it like this. And so what I'm going to start with today is the pie crust, and I always make my pie crust homemade. It's not something that, you know, I jumped into right away and was able to master right away. Making a pie crust is sometimes pretty difficult for some folks, and it was for me. I had to practice quite a bit to get better at it. So what I'm going to use today is what I always use, is butter flavor Crisco. Now I know, you know, Crisco is bad and all of that. We don't eat it all the time, and we certainly don't. I don't cook with it for the most part. I use olive oil and some lard, avocado oil, those kind of things. But I do use this for my pie crust, and to me it makes the best pie crust. And you know, also too, if you're eating pie, you know, probably, you know, worrying about the Crisco and the pie crust is, you know, among many things about the pie itself that don't make it the most healthy thing. But if you eat dessert in moderation, you know, I think everybody can enjoy it a little bit. Now, I will say this though, this is for Jimmy, and I've been trying real hard for almost a year to pretty much stay away from sugar, because my A1C was that close from diabetic level. So runs in my family, and so I'm trying real hard to stay away from sugar, limit the amount of carbs that I eat, and try to behave myself. So in the meantime, what I have here is a cup of all-purpose flour, and I've got about a teaspoon of salt. And so I've incorporated that well into this little bowl. And I always use, instead of a pastry blender, I always use these forks. They're called, some people call them a granny fork, a blending fork. I think they work better, in my opinion, than a pastry blender, but you know, some folks really like those as well. So anyhow, and what we're going to add to this and get it mixed up and crumbly is about 6 tablespoons of well-chilled butter flavor Crisco. And I went ahead and measured that out, and it's sitting in the fridge, so I'm going to grab that really quick. So here's our butter flavor Crisco, about 6 tablespoons. And I'm going to just plop that on in here and get that mixed up really well. When you're doing a pie crust, you want it to be crumbly. And, you know, for example, this wouldn't be quite mixed well. So you want it to be crumbly, and so that takes just a few minutes to get that blended up. And then another secret about a pie crust is, like, for example, I'm blending this with the fork. Could you use your hands? Sure. But your hands have warmth, and so that tends to kind of affect that Crisco, that shortening, or lard. If you were using lard, it would affect that as well. So anyway, that's why we always use a fork or a pastry blender. Not saying you can't use your hands, but that is not something that I use. Plus, you get it all over your hands, and then you got a mess. So anyway, doesn't take very long to get this kind of crumbly and blended up. And so I'm almost there already. So as you can see, I'll show this to y'all so you can kind of see the texture. So that's kind of what you have once this is blended up. I don't know if y'all can see that, but anyway, that's about what you have. And so the recipe on this calls for, you know, it's like a two shell recipe. So I'm just doing one pie. So I've just halved it, cut it in half. So anyway, and then another secret to making a pie crust is I always have used ice water to put in the crust. That's one of the last things you put in. So I'm going to grab some water. So here's my ice water. And I just find that using ice water, you know, again, going back to that keeping everything cool, that's kind of what it does for you. So I'm going to start off with 4 tablespoons. You don't want to put too much in because the thing about pie crust, it's kind of like making bread. You know, you kind of got to get used to doing it and just learn the basics and how it should feel and how wet you should get it. But blending back in more flour, I've always found, you know, creates more challenges. So now I'm using my fingers just to kind of get this wrapped up in a ball. And what we're going to do, we're going to turn this out onto a mat that I can roll it out. And then we'll show you that part as well. So let me get this out of the way. Leaving my ice water just in case I need a little bit more. Got my mat over here. I always cheat with one of these pie crust mats or dough mats. I find that it's easier for me to roll things out on these. And then here is my rolling pin. I'm going to kind of get this up in a dough ball, so to speak. Trying not to work it too much with my hands because it is nice and chilled at this point. But just to get those crumbs all blended together. All right. Okay. We're there. So that's what we got. So now grab me a little tiny bit of flour here just to throw down on this mat. And what we're going to do, again, never blend too much flour into a pie crust or it'll end up being tough. And nobody likes that when they're eating these things. So, all right. So there's that, and then we're just gonna roll this out. Kind of shape it as you go along. Try to keep it in a circle to an extent. Don't think I'm going to need any more of this water. So I'll get that out of the way so y'all can see. And there's that. Get that out of the way. Yeah, that feels good. It's soft, but it's not so sticky that I can't handle it with my fingers. And it's still, what little bit I handled it, it's still nice and chilly, which is what you want. So we're just going to keep trying to get this to where it will fit into a 9-inch pie plate. Just continue rolling that out. Now, the holidays, a lot of folks buy frozen pie crust, or if they're not real great at making pie crust, certainly that's a nice little trick, you know, because you have so many things to bake. I know at Christmas and Thanksgiving I made, oh God, I don't know how many pies I made, and I made a cheesecake because we got one kid that loves cheesecake. So anyway, it was a lot of pie and a lot of dessert. So anyway, all right, so I think that looks good. So now we are just going to carefully fold this over, hopefully without tearing it, which I just did. But that's okay. We can work with that. Fold this over, and then I fold it again. And then I bring my pie plate over here. And then I've got just a folded piece of dough here, so I can handle it and get it in here. So just lay that in there, and then we're just going to unfold it. Just like that, and try not to tear it. And again, I tore this, but I'll show you what I'll do. See how I tore that right there when I was stretching it and lifting it in here? So we'll just patch it, and you will never ever know. Never ever know. So what I do when I get a pie crust going like this, definitely get it pressed into the pan, and this is going to be a pie where you're going to pre-bake that shell. Some pies, like for example pumpkin pie, you would, you know, put a raw pie crust, pour your filling over the top, and bake all of that together. Now with a chocolate, or for example like a lemon, coconut cream, you're always going to pre-bake that pie shell. And so now we're just kind of shaping this pie crust a little bit. Now you could trim these edges off, but what I do, because this is plenty thin, just fold those over and kind of mash them in place. I get that all mashed and mushed in there. Shaping it with your fingers. And bada bing, bada boom, we're almost done. So I've got my oven preheating, and I will poke some holes in this with a fork, which, my bad, I threw my fork in the sink. So we're going to shape that with our fingers, like so. So we have kind of a pretty crust. It'll be kind of fluted on the edges, and all you do is just pinch your fingers like that. It's kind of like that. So you just pinch your fingers on that. And I apologize, once I get another tripod or something, I'll have the camera down here close showing how we're doing this. But anyway, hopefully you can see. Anyway, so we're just gonna pinch those edges to where it looks kind of pretty. And that is it. Just that easy. Alright, let me step and get a fork. I'm going to poke some holes in this. I don't think it'll bubble up, but sometimes I do this just to kind of make sure. So now they do make these things, they're like weights that you can put in the bottom of these to, you know, if you ever have a problem with a pie crust bubbling up. And I used to, you know, when I first started learning how to make pie crust, you know, tough, bubbled up, shrank, I mean, all the above I did. But it's, like I said, it's kind of like making bread. You have to do this enough times to just know how it's supposed to feel. And I wish I had a better explanation than that. And also with pie crust, just like bread, you have to be a little bit militant about the ingredients list and sticking to them. You need to be pretty precise when you measure these things. So anyway, that's a tip. So I'm going to throw this in the oven, which I have preheated to 400, and then I'll reduce the temperature down after about 15 minutes or so, and then shortly after that it should be getting close to done. I'll Put that on the bottom rack so it will get nice and brown. And I'm going to pause here for now, and I'll come back to y'all after I get some of this little bit cleaned up, and then we'll start making the chocolate filling. And Mima used to always use canned milk. She never used just fresh milk out of the refrigerator. She always used canned milk, so that's just what I've always done. A lot of people, that's what they use also. Another thing too, with a rolling pin, kind of like a cast iron skillet, you get these things seasoned. I would never drop this in a pan full of soapy water. I just kind of wipe it off, and it does have kind of a greasy sheen, but it's dry to the touch, and I make sure there's no flour or dough left on here, and that keeps these things seasoned to where they don't stick to your crust or whatever you're rolling out. So anyway, so we'll pause for now, and I'll be back after I get the ingredients together for the chocolate filling, because we have to cook that on the stove, get it thickened, and then the last thing you do is egg whites. And so this will be a chocolate meringue pie, and let me tell you what, it's good. So what we've got here on the filling, we've got about 4 tablespoons of flour, and you know, probably about 2 heaping tablespoons of cocoa. And then I'm going to add in here, Mima said 3 egg yolks. I always put 4. I guess maybe it helps it thicken faster. I don't know why I do that. But and then a tablespoon of, she had margarine, so that kind of dates, you know, her recipe a little bit. I always put butter, so a tablespoon of butter, teaspoon of vanilla, and I always add that at the end after I've already cooked and thickened the pudding. Cup sugar. I think that's it. Yeah. So what I do, I put the flour and the cocoa in my saucepan dry, kind of get that whisked up, try to mix up all the lumps, any lumps there might be, and then I add in my liquid slowly and kind of get it mixed up, because if you dump everything, it's going to be hard to get those lumps out. So also canned milk, I did have to add, this calls for 2 cups, so I did have to add about 4 ounces of regular milk, because I scrounged the cabinets and I didn't have another can of milk. So apparently all that got used around Thanksgiving and Christmas. So here we go, folks. Also, here's our eggs. I've got some really good brown eggs, which I saved to eat for breakfast. And I'll use these white ones to cook with. I think these are store-bought. So anyway, so we're going to separate these eggs. I'm going to hang on to the egg whites, because that is going to be used in our, wow, got a double yolked egg here. That's going to be used in our meringue. So I'm going to throw those, throw the egg yolks in there. So, and save the whites off to the side. So we'll just separate the eggs like so. And again, putting 4 egg yolks in the pudding that I'm going to cook on the top of the stove. So adding that to our cocoa and our flour. And this would be number 4, I believe. I think so. This is number 4. So there's that. Okay. So egg yolks are in. These are the whites. I'm going to set these aside. And again, that will be for the meringue. We'll do that last after we've gotten our pudding thickened and we've got that poured into our shell. We'll get that last part done. So here's that tablespoon roughly of butter. So that's what I put in. And then we need our sugar out here in a minute. So let me grab the sugar. So I put about a cup of sugar in here. That is what the recipe calls for. This is a 9 1/2-inch pie shell. So if you were making a bigger pie, maybe bigger batch of chocolate pudding, you'd probably add a little more sugar, a little more everything to get you a little more volume. So, but this way, not just completely overpowering it with sugar. Trust me, it'll be plenty sweet. You actually taste some of that chocolate in there. So I'm just kind of giving this a mix up a little bit. I'm going to add some of this milk, not all of it. And again, this is just to kind of get it blended rather than throwing it all in at once. It makes getting them lumps out a whole lot easier than throwing it all together like immediately. And again, the whisk works wonders. Because again, if you throw it all in there at once, you'll end up with these dry lumps of cocoa or flour even. And then you'll be sitting there as you're cooking it trying to get them all mashed out, and that just, it's just not fun. So anyway, so this is what we'll do. And we will get this on the stove here shortly. I'll show y'all what we got. And I probably won't keep you on here while I get this thickened, but basically you're going to cook it on top of the stove. Could you use a double boiler if you were worried about milk scorching? Sure. I never have. I'm sure my grandma never did either. But I just kind of go slow, you know, maybe medium heat, something like that. And then keep stirring constantly. Your arm will feel like it's going to fall off by the time you get this thickened. But I've never had problem with it scorching, and then all of a sudden it'll get thick and you'll be ready to roll. So afterwards, like I said, we'll add the vanilla in after we have removed it from the heat. This is vanilla that I did, oh gosh, probably 2 years ago. I had the vanilla beans and the vodka and all of that, and I've had this kind of marinating for a couple years. So at some point I'll have to make some more because I'm getting kind of low on that. And vanilla is so expensive. It's expensive either way. Vanilla beans are expensive. Vanilla extract in the store. If you do a lot of cooking, sometimes I find it's better to do this if you think ahead and you can make you up a bunch. Because it's not worth doing just a little bit. If you don't cook a lot, it'd probably make more sense for you to just buy it at the store, but it does taste really good. Just takes some time and some planning ahead. So, all right, I feel pretty good about that. Getting that kind of mixed up. Kind of looks like chocolate milk a little bit. And I'm gonna close the camera for now and get this all thickened up, and then bring y'all back once I do, and then we'll pour that into that baked pie shell. I will crank on the oven once again, and then we'll start blending up the meringue. I'll have to bring the big mixer over here and get that rolling so y'all can see that. And yeah, we'll get that pie all fixed up, and we'll toast the meringue at the very end, and it'll be yummy. So stay tuned. We'll be back. All right, folks, so here we are stirring this on the stove. This is why I didn't keep you guys along for this, because it does take quite a while to get it thickened. And you want to keep stirring pretty vigorously just to kind of, you still have a few lumps you're working on in spite of our pre-mixing. Keep those going so you can get all of those scraped out. And as you can see, it's just a light chocolate color. And then once we get this heated up and get it thickened, then we'll pour it in the shell. And I'll certainly bring y'all back for that. I'll show you that shell here, how lovely that is. Nice brown. Got a little bit too brown on that side, but that's okay. That's okay. Once we put the filling in there and the meringue in there, you will never know. And in the oven for the meringue, it doesn't take, gosh, very little time to get that toasted. We'll time it and I'll let you know. But anyway, so I'm going to pause for now and spare you guys from all of this stirring and thickening. But this is basically what you do. Just get it all thickened up and then you'll be ready to roll. Okay folks, so you can kind of see the thickness of this now. This is it's just gotten finished, and just a thick pudding, really. And I don't know, it maybe took me 10 minutes maybe on the stove. So I'm going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla and mix that in really well, and then I will be pouring it into the pie shell, and then we'll get to the point of getting our meringue done, and that'll come in next. Folks, back for the final installment here. So I'm going to show you what we have. We have our egg whites, and these have been sitting here since we started this process, so they've definitely come more to room temperature, which is what you want for meringue. And we've got our baked pie shell that we made, lovely, and we've got our chocolate pudding. So I will be pouring this into the shell, and you want to always put, at least I'm pretty sure, I can't remember who told me this, but you always want to put your meringue on top of, you don't want to put meringue on top of cold filling. Warm filling, and it helps it seal better, is what I've always been told, and also can help you avoid any kind of almost like a syrupy kind of stuff that forms on top. Sugar, I guess, from the sugar. So I've got a pan here. What I need is a kid here to scream that they want this, but no kids. So anyway, that was the case when the kids were home, for sure. They always wanted to fight over these things, which I'm sure your kids were like that too. So we've got that in the pie shell. I've got the oven preheating to about 350, and we're going to put in our egg whites into the mixer here. And I will, this will be a little noisy. Maybe I'll turn the camera off and we'll come back. But I'm going to beat these eggs, add about a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and I'll get them nice and stiff with that. And then I'm going to come in with about a 1/4 cup of sugar after the eggs have already formed a peak somewhat. And then a lot of folks don't put vanilla, but I always put a little bit of vanilla in at the end. So again, 4 egg whites with a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. We're going to get that beat up to where it's nice and stiff, and then add your sugar. Don't add it all at once. Ask me how I know when I was learning to cook. Don't add it all at once, or it will not form that peak that you want the meringue to look like. So again, I'm going to shut down the camera because it will be quite noisy, and then we'll go from there after it is done. Now, can y'all see how stiff this egg white mixture? I mean, it looks like looks kind of like Cool Whip, right? So if that gives you a reference, it looks like whipped cream. So now we are going to add the sugar, and then at the very end I'll add just a little dab of vanilla. So now y'all can see roughly what we got there. Alright folks, we are almost there. Alright, so be sure when you're mixing, your sugar and everything up at the very end, mix it really well, and go and scrape the sides down in your mixing bowl, because if you don't, you'll end up with kind of grit in your meringue, which is never good. So anyway, so we'll get that off of there. That's probably close enough. And we're going to get this on. Ooh, that's beautiful. Look at how thick that meringue is. Wonderful, wonderful. That's what we want. I mean, you want it to be fluffy and stiff. And I'll show you why at the end, because we got to make this look pretty, right? So, like all them pies at the bakery, how they look so pretty in the cases or whatever. So that's what we want this one to look like. I'll scrape as much of this out as we can. And the old finger trick, hands are clean. So, alright, get this out of the way. And again, oven has been preheating. So you want to seal your meringue around the edge of your pie crust. You know, just kind of bring it down to touch those edges. Kind of seal it up nice. And then we just want to kind of play at that point. Make sure you kind of got it all globbed on there even. In other words, one side doesn't have more gooey than the other. So and you just kind of want to play and make it look pretty. And then we'll just take that last little dollop off our spatula, kind of throw it on there somewhere if it'll turn loose. And that's it. So now we will, okay, leave it alone, G. Alright, so now we're going to put this thing in the oven and we're going to toast this meringue. And take Henry out. He had to go to the restroom. So anyway, here we are. Finished product here. Hopefully you can see that. It has been toasted in the oven and it is hot, hot, hot. So there it is. Beautiful. We did it. We did it. So I'll leave you with this. That is Mima's chocolate pie recipe. About the only thing that I do different, I do add 4 egg yolks, and she only did 3. I think it helps thicken it maybe a little faster. And then also it gives you another egg white too to make your meringue a little beefier. So the main thing, stay pretty militant about your pie crust, because if you don't follow those instructions or some instructions, you can have a lot of those failures. And keep trying. It takes a while to get pie crust down, just like it takes a while to get bread down. And anyway, hopefully you guys will enjoy this, and it is really good. It is really good. I'm going to stay away from it, but Jimmy will certainly enjoy it. And I'll leave you with a couple of other things, and that is some of the things we have going on. I will be working on my cinder block steps that I'm trying to put in place in front of my shed. And then I'm going to be getting some hardware cloth to tack around the bottom of the shed, because pretty soon, although we've just had an ice storm here in Texas, it will be snake season and they'll be coming out. And so I want to try to barricade that off to where they don't make a home up underneath my shed. And then also that, and then doing some work in the garden, getting plant starts going and that sort of thing. And just taking y'all along for whatever else we got going on here on the farm. And I'll leave you with another little funny, and that is my dear sweet sister Linda. God rest her soul. I miss her. But she used to always say about pie, she would say, you would ask her what her favorite kind of pie was. And she would say, I have 2 favorite kinds. And I'd say, well, what are the 2 favorite kinds? And she would say, she loved cold pie and warm pie. So if that gives you an idea of her personality, she was a hoot. So anything warm, anything cold, she loved it all. So this one is the same. You'll enjoy it. So I'll try to link the recipe in the description box down below the video. And y'all try. You can do it. Practice. You can do it. And hopefully the kids are watching this, and it'll be one more for them to put down that Mom has showed them. So anyway, y'all enjoy. See you next time. Keep the faith.